Hello, my name is Morgan Gray, and welcome back to the Afrocentric podcast.
Baby, you understand me now. If sometimes you see that I'm mad, don't you know no one alive can always be an angel? When everything goes wrong, you see some bad. But I'm just a soul whose intentions are good. Oh Lord, please don't let me be misunderstood.
We don't funk with racism. We don't funk with people who don't support the LGBTQ plus community. And baby, we damn sure don't funk with anybody who don't love a beautiful black queen, baby. You see this tape.
When they go low, I go low.
You don't let nobody act black and then go home and be white.
I got 2 pistols and a pit bull. Me. That's all I need.
It only takes a little bit of white brainwash to activate the coon chip in the average Negro.
You think Harriet Tubman was walking around with a fucking nice shiny fucking dress on with a fucking crown on her head when she was taking slaves to freedom?
And a lot of white folk have demonstrated eloquently that they don't have no sense.
And we are back with the Afrocentric podcast. The title of this episode is called Freestyle 2, She Who Struggles. Guys, it is so great to be back in the studio today. I'm sure you guys have noticed that there's a new logo. Before I divulge into this topic of this episode, I just wanted to give a great big shout out to Femi Johnson as well as to Miss Quanisha. They did a phenomenal job invoking the vision that I had for this logo, and I feel like it really does express the Afrocentric aesthetic. So thank you guys so much. If you need a photographer, if you need a logo, make sure you hit up Femi Johnson. If you need a hairstylist, please contact Quanisha. Jesus, what is Quanisha's name? It's the Lab. Yes, the Lab. Y'all contact her. It has been a phenomenal experience, and thank you guys again. Now, back to the topic at hand. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you guys today, simply because this episode is based off of my historiography final from when I was in college as an undergrad student in history. It was originally a 20-page paper that I wrote about Black luminaries and their fight against oppression. But this episode has been reimagined for me, and I wanted to rework this topic from the perspective of the struggle, specifically the struggles of Black women for the liberation of Black people. So in this episode, I'm going to be providing an analysis of Black female literature from different luminaries who really understood the purpose of struggle, as well as found a way to alter the negative stigma that's truly attached to the struggle, and then to find a way to redefine the struggle. So in this episode, we are going to be highlighting memoirs. We're going to be highlighting different books written by Black female leaders from the 18th, 19th century, 20th century, so on and so forth. And we're going to be doing an analysis of their work. Okay, so if I were you, I would stick around. You're going to hear me talk and analyze Sojourner Truth, Ain't I a Woman, The Progress of Colored Women by Mary Church Terrell, Assata Shakur's Autobiography, as well as A Taste of Power by Elaine Brown.
But these become very important as you see how these things move forward. Then there was J. Marion Sims. I won't spend a lot of time with him. He's another figure. You can Google him. There's a statue, actually, of him in Central Park. And J. Marion Sims was an individual credited. He was a father of modern gynecology. How many women in here know what a vaginal speculum is? And for those men in the room that we lost, a vaginal speculum is a device designed to open up the vagina. It was considered one of the most important advancements in medicine that was made. He was credited as being the wealthiest wealthiest physician to have ever lived. And what's interesting about him, look at the medals pinned on him. I was just very curious about how it was they regarded this man, because no one ever really looked at how did he come up with that vaginal speculum. The way he did it was he actually worked on unanesthetized, did experiments on unanesthetized slave women. He created a makeshift hospital in his backyard in the mid-1800s. He built the first vaginal speculum from a pewter spoon. And he reasoned that slave women were able to bear great pain, meaning we don't need any anesthesia, because their race made them more durable, and thus they were well suited for painful medical experimentation. We didn't even, because we didn't feel like other women could feel. This man would cut into women, cut into them, and just said, well, since they're black, they don't really feel it. Unbelievable. And more importantly is what he did to infants, because not only did he experiment on women, he also experimented on infants. He said that black infants suffered from something he called trimus nascentium, which is now commonly referred to as neonatal tetanus. Neonatal tetanus originates in horse manure, which was a likely cause of the disease in slave infants. He attributed it to the indecency and intellectual flaws of slave infants, together with skull malformations at birth. That is a shoemaker's awl. And that's an 1800s shoemaker's awl. He would stick that into the heads of brand new infants in an effort to realign their skulls based on the indecency and intellectual flaws of their parents, to treat the malady. Of course, it was 100% death rate. But that's what he would stick in the head of a baby at birth. And so these are things that are so horrific that you can't possibly wrap your head around it. And this man is, just Google him. And I think to myself, if I were up here in front of you right now, and this is going to become very important as I move into the other slides. If I stomped a puppy to death up here, just a little puppy, and stomped it right here to death in front of you, most of you would need therapy. And I would be arrested probably faster than killing a black man for killing a puppy. How could you do that? Do you realize how much dissonance you have to remove in order to stick that into the brain of a child? More importantly, the child can no longer be human. Are you understanding what I'm saying? The reason why he could do it is they weren't human. They didn't even feel pain. That's what this man believed. Now, you may look at that and go, those are horrific things from the past. There's a book out right now, not table reading. It's called Medical Apartheid. This was written by Harriet Washington, came out last year. This book chronicles the experimentation on black people up to contemporary day. See, we want to look at the Tuskegee experiments. We want to look at Sims and go, oh, that just still going on. Implicated, Harvard, Johns Hopkins, because we weren't what? Human. So that dehumanization is something that we really got to appreciate. Went on for a long time. Can you go back? Back one more. No white could ever rape a slave woman. The regulations of law as to the white race on the subject of sexual intercourse do not and cannot, for obvious reasons, apply to slaves. Their intercourse is promiscuous. We've now justified raping black women because they can't be raped. We aren't raping them. They're promiscuous by nature. So we can't do it. Forward, one more. The fact that white men could profit from raping their female slaves does not mean that their motive was economic. The rape of slave women by their masters was primarily a weapon of terror that reinforced whites' domination over their human property. Rape was an act of physical violence designed to stifle black women's will to resist and to remind them of their servile status. These become important instruments that you look at. And I want to give you some statistics as it relates to American history. By the mid-1800s, there was over 600,000 mixed-race children born. 600,000. How many of you know what miscegenation is? Miscegenation is the illegal marriage between people of different races. Actually, it was very profound here. That it was illegal to marry someone of another race. So when you consider the fact that one of the greatest issues and one of the number one reasons why black men were lynched, beaten, and imprisoned had to do with the fear that they were going to rape whom? White women. Now the numbers, I mean, we're talking about pure numbers alone. It was who being raped?
Before we can really divulge in the depths of this conversation as it relates to black women and the struggle, we really have to define what the struggle is. The struggle in the context of the black community really does refer to this ongoing fight against systemic racism, oppression, and inequality. What it does is it encompasses the efforts to achieve things like liberation, justice, and equality for black individuals and their communities. So as it relates to black women, the impact of the struggle on black womanhood is so significant, as many black women often face these intersectioning forms of discrimination based on race and on gender. Now, black women have historically played this crucial role in the fight for civil rights and the fight for social justice, but their contributions have very often been overlooked. And we see this time and time again during the civil rights movement. There were so many black women who were placed on the sidelines, or their voices were overlooked on purpose just because the black men during the time period wanted to be the face of the movement. So the impact of the struggle on black womanhood really does include addressing issues like misogyny, like the wage gap, and the fight for reproductive rights and healthcare access. And I think this conversation is so timeless because this struggle still continues. All of these things that black women have been fighting for are the same things that we are still currently fighting for today. They're just resurfaced, and as my mama say, ain't nothing new up under the sun. So when we're talking about the struggle, it really does involve the idea of advocating for the recognition of the unique challenges and the experience faced by black women within the broader context of racial and gender inequalities and efforts. Okay. Now, while I have you, and before we move on, I know that words like intersection, misogyny, those are some very big words for Elmo, but I don't want you to be intimidated by these words. As we move and work through these passages, these memoirs, these quotes from these different books, I promise I'm going to break these concepts down to you, because the evolution of the struggle is really what I want us all to grasp onto it, because the struggle is not always a negative thing. Sometimes it has to be embraced. Sometimes it has to be appreciated, and from the struggle comes something that is anew.
In 1851, the black abolitionist and former slave Sojourner Truth spoke to a gathering of feminists in Akron, Ohio. The spontaneous speech, only a few minutes long, was a landmark moment in feminist and abolitionist history.
Well, children, where there is so much racket, There must be something out of kilter. I think that twixt the Negroes of the South and the women at the North all talking about rights, the white man gonna be in a fix pretty soon. But what's all this here talking about? That man over there says that women need to be helped into carriages and lifted over ditches and to have the best place everywhere. Nobody ever helps me into carriages or over mud puddles or gives me any best place. And ain't I a woman? Look at me. Look at my arm. I have plowed and planted and gathered into barns, and no man could head me. And ain't I a woman? I could work as much and eat as much as any man when I could get it. And I could bear the lash as well. And ain't I a woman? I have borne 13 children, seen most sold off into slavery. And when I cried out with a mother's grief, none but Jesus heard me. And ain't I a woman? And they talk about this thing in the head. What is it they call it? Oh, that's right, yeah, intellect. That's it, honey. Well, what's that got to do with women's rights and Negroes' rights? If my cup won't hold but a pint and yours holds a quart, wouldn't you be mean not to let me have my little half measure full? That man in the back there, he says women can't have as much rights as men because Christ wasn't a woman. But where did your Christ come from? Where did your Christ come from? He came from God and a woman. Man didn't have nothing to do with it. If the first woman God ever made was strong enough to turn the world upside down all alone, well, these women here together ought to be able to turn it back and get it right side up again. And they asking to do it. The men better let them.
The first type of struggle that we're going to be focusing on is the physical struggle of Black women, or the physical struggle attached to Black women. And the idea that I'm pulling this from, the context is coming from Sojourner Truth's speech that she gave in 1851 entitled "Ain't I a Woman?" Now, like I said, she gave this speech in 1851 at the Women's Rights Convention. And let me just set the scene for you before we start talking about this speech. Now, she was at a convention, and this convention was organized for women by women, and it was held in Akron, Ohio, and it was the first women's rights convention that really did discuss the social, economic, and religious rights of all women. And when I say all women, the asterisk and it is applied that it was white women. So during this time period, of course, it was highly segregated. When you think about the context of this speech, a lot of historians actually question the authenticity of this speech. The speech was written in a different type of language than how it was accurately spoken. A lot of people feel like a white woman within the crowd rewrote the speech to make it sound more spectacular than what it was. But nevertheless, this is the article that we do have, and we're going to take it at face value. Okay? So, again, the name of this speech is "Ain't I a Woman?" And I think it's so powerful and it's so redundant. The purpose of this speech was really a way to display the apparent inequalities and the challenges that really do reside within Black womanhood. And the speech, which is very brief, it starts off with Sojourner Truth saying, "Well, children, where there is so much racket, there must be out kilter." And right here, she is really referring to the audience as children, and it kind of unifies all of her listeners. I might be white, you might be white, I might be Black, I even believe that Frederick Douglass also attended this conference. So he was a black man in attendance. But under the eyes of God, we are all equal because we are children. So it is because this speech has these religious tones that her listening audience knows that regardless of their race, that they're all children of God. So Sojourner Truth, she goes on to say that different subordinate groups, in this case, the entirety of the race, black race and women, are really discussing the issues of rights and equality, or the lack thereof, throughout the United States during this time period. And she goes on to predict that white men would, quote, be in a fix. And when she says that, she's really saying that they would eventually have to provide the same type of quality of life to those same subordinate groups that so often are taken for granted. So this is her introduction. Okay, so now she gets into the meat and the potatoes of this speech, and it is here where you can see the struggle. So Truth, she really does take the time to compare the fragilities of the perspective of white women and how it differs from being a black woman and how black women are often viewed. Now she says that man over there says women need to be helped into carriages and lifted over ditches and have the best place everywhere. It is that here that Sojourner Truth really does paint this narrative that white women are socially considered dainty and easily broken. Now, sidebar, I was watching American Horror Story the other day. I was watching Roanoke, and the main characters in this season were a black man, and obviously, and he was played by Cuba Gooding Jr., and they had him married to a white woman. Okay, that's cool. We're gonna overlook that. Then they move into this new house, and the house is haunted, right? And his wife's wife, she's is late at night, and she's hearing something. She's like, I'm finna go out into the woods, and I'm finna go look. And her husband is looking at her like, oh no. And he followed this white woman into the woods, but as soon as he get her out there, he becomes so extremely concerned and worried for her life. And it's because of the way that society really does make white women kind of look like they're so dainty and fragile and easily broken. And you know what? There's another great example of this is when we think about the 1950s housewife that's so glorified right now in the year of our Lord 2023. It's very well known that during the 1950s, white women were so overly medicated. They were extremely high off of opioids. They were popping pills like crazy. But besides that fact, even during the 1950s, when it is concerned to childbirth, these white women were overly medicated. There are a lot of historical accounts of women stating that they were so over medicated when they went into labor that when they gave birth to their children, they didn't even remember it. And it was because the doctors were overly prescribing them medication. And this was something that, you know, we're starting to see the ramifications of now with the opioid crisis. But I digress. That is just an example of seeing how people in different spaces and different spheres see and maintain and uplift the fragility of white womanhood, right? And we get all of this from that one statement that Sojourner Truth makes. She really does drive home the fact that the white woman's worth is seemingly higher and more precious than the worth of the black woman. And this can be seen when Sojourner Truth really does conclude her argument. And she states, nobody ever helped me into carriages or over mud puddles or gives me any best place. And ain't I a woman? And it's here in Sojourner Truth's introduction of her argument, she states it so clearly. Ain't I a woman? And it really does force the audience to critically analyze the difference in which women of different races go through. And what that difference is merely their color of their skin. And that is the part of the struggle, to be born a woman and still to be looked at as if you're not even an equal, not even a person, simply as help or as free labor or as cattle, but never just a woman. So moving on, she really does take the time to call the attention to her female form or her female body. And she says, look at me. Look at my arm. I have plowed and I have planted and I have gathered into barns. She's telling you she is physically strong, and although the strength is oftentimes considered a male characteristic trait, she's still so strong, and she is a woman. In fact, she goes on to say that no man could head me. And ain't I a woman? That means that in this context, seen is really in the verb form. So it's used in a way to show that many men would never be able to surpass her work ethic or her strength, and she is forced to do this harsh manual labor. And that's something that a fragile white woman would never dare be questioned to do. And she proves that her strength does not make her any less. In fact, Truth and many other people could argue that her strength really does make her more divinely feminine. Moreover, she really does reveal that in her lifetime, she could, quote, work as much as a man and bear the lashes as well.
Chris Broussard, Rob Parker, I sentence you both to 2,500 lashes for conduct unbecoming a black man. Michael Wilbon, you fat, bald-headed, no-neck midget, I sentence you to 3,000 lashes for conduct unbecoming a black man. Snow Bunny Shannon Sharp, you're the biggest and strongest of everybody on the list, so I'm going to have to sentence you for 10,000 lashes for conduct unbecoming a black man and saying that no black woman can make you happy. 10,000 lashes for Snow Bunny Shannon Sharp.
Just imagine that you are a woman. You are designed differently by God, by the divine, made in the image of the divine. And yet, because of the color of your skin, you must, and not only must you, but you can work as much as a man, and you can bear the lashes as well.
What's your name? Kanye West? What's your name? LeBron James. Hope y'all enjoyed the show.
Okay, she has the same physical attributes of a man as and considers both sexes to be created equally, but black women are still treated like property. They're still treated like cattle, like animals. So to digress and to wrap all of this together, Sojourner Truth, she really finishes her speech through this attempt to tug at the heartstrings of all mothers. And she says, I bore 5 children. I seen them all sold into slavery. And when I cried out with a mother's grief, none but Jesus heard. And ain't I a woman? So she is a woman. She's telling you that she is naming off like the main characteristic, if you ask most men, of what makes someone a woman: the ability to reproduce. She's reproduced 5 times, and she had her family ripped apart from her. She uses the term grief to describe the overwhelming sadness that she feels because her children are not dead, but they were taken from her. And her word really does resemble the countless amount of mothers who were forcibly separated from their offsprings, and their children were again sold off like cattle, not like people. And isn't she a woman? And she ends it by talking about how none but Jesus heard her. And it's crazy because the only person to Sojourner at this time would be Jesus, the divine in her perspective. He was the only one that could hear her pain because no one else would be able to acknowledge her femininity or her humanity as a person. And that within of itself is a part of the struggle. I just wanted to go over this speech because to me it's so powerful, because it's something that I still go through as a daily, on a day-to-day basis as a Black woman. Oftentimes, although I am a woman, not feeling like people are treating me as if I'm a woman based off of their societal concepts of what a woman should be or what a woman should do. And even when I do those things, or even if I don't do those things, because those are performative actions, at the end of the day, I am still a woman and I should be treated as such. And I think that is so powerful because during this period when she was giving this speech, this is the 1800s, this is before emancipation, she literally had to justify her womanhood. And that's just crazy to me because it's a topic and it's something that's still reoccurring today.
Excerpt from Mary Church Terrell's The Progress of Colored Women. Feeling the great responsibility resting upon them, therefore, colored women, both in organizations under the National Association and as individuals, are working with might and main to afford their unfortunate sisters opportunities of civilization and education, which without them, they would be unable to secure. In New York City, a mission has been established and is entirely supported by colored women under supervision of the New York City Board. It has in operation a kindergarten, classes in cooking and sewing, mothers' meetings, men's meetings, a reading circle, and a manual training school for boys. Much the same kind of work is done by the Colored Women's League and the Ladies Auxiliary of this city, the Kansas City League of Missouri, the Women's Era Club of Boston, the Women's Loyal Union of New York, and other organizations representing almost every state in the Union. The Phyllis Wheatley Club of New Orleans, another daughter of the National Association, has in 2 short years succeeded in establishing a sanatorium and a training school for nurses. The conditions which caused the colored women of New Orleans to choose this special field in which to operate are such as exist in many other sections of our land. From the city hospitals, colored doctors are excluded altogether. To even being allowed to practice in the colored wards and colored patients, no matter how wealthy they are, no, not received at all, unless they are willing to go into the charity wards. Thus, the establishment of a sanatorium answers a variety of purposes. It affords colored medical students an opportunity of gaining a practical knowledge of their profession, and it furnishes a well-equipped establishment for colored patients who do not care to go into the charity wards of the public hospitals. The daily clinics have been a great blessing to the colored poor. In the operating department, supplied with all the modern appliances, 200 operations have been performed, all of which have resulted successfully under the colored surgeon-in-chief. Of the 8 nurses who have registered, 1 has already passed an examination before the State Medical Board of Louisiana and is now practicing her profession. During the yellow fever epidemic in New Orleans last summer, there was a constant demand for Phyllis Wheatley nurses. By indefatigable energy and heroic sacrifice of both money and time, these noble women raised nearly $1,000 with which to defray the expenses of the sanatorium for the first 8 months of its existence. They have recently succeeded in securing from the city of New Orleans an annual appropriation of $240, which they hope will soon be increased. Dotted all over the country are charitable organizations for the aged, orphaned, and poor, which have been established by colored women. Just how many, it is difficult to state.
Moving right along, let's shift to the 1900s, specifically 1904. we will be discussing Mary Church Terrell's writing entitled The Progress of Colored Women. This is post-emancipation. This is before the Great Depression. During this time period, especially in the American South, there is the Red Terror. There's so many lynchings going on, murders of Black people, the rise of the Ku Klux Klan. And despite of all of these things, Mary Church Terrell, who is a luminary, and she's an activist during her time period. She takes the time to discuss the growth of Black women post-slavery and the changes that Black women have gone through as a way to achieve equality as a race. So before Mary Church Terrell even takes the time to even talk about what it is that Black women do, she takes the time to define what Black womanhood is. What she states is, quote, not only because they are women, but because they are colored women, they are discouraged and disappointment, and it is meeting them at every turn. But in spite of the obstacles encountered, the progress made by colored women along many lines appears like a veritable miracle of modern times. So despite the struggle, despite all of the adversities, she states that it is a miracle that Black women are able to be progressive or even able to combat. And you have to understand, this is about 50 years after Sojourner Truth gives her speech just justifying her womanhood. And now Black women have been given their liberation. They are free people. Legally, but socially and culturally, they're still being treated like animals, inhumane ways, and yet they're overturning this enslavement mindset, and they're going out and they're getting the bag. They're overcoming their struggles, and she is absolutely right. That is a miracle, because that type of mindset had been implanted in women for such a long time during that enslavement period. And just to think about that, Mary Church Terrell really does talk about how slavery impacted the Black community and how it truly did hold us back. And she says, quote, in spite of the fateful heritage of slavery, even though the safeguards usually thrown around maidenly youth and innocence are in some sections entirely withheld from colored girls, statistics compiled by men not inclined to falsify in favor of my race show that immorality among the colored women of the United States is not so great as among women of similar environment and temptations in Italy, Germany, Sweden, and France. So during the late 1800s and the early 1900s, women of African American descent, they often strayed away from politics and advocacy. And this idea was really iterated and reiterated and pointed out several times throughout Mary Church Terrell's work. I'll give you an example where she writes, quote, politics have been religiously eschewed by colored women. So in other words, Black women during this time period, they avoided politics on a moral ground, and as time passed, these women took it upon themselves to make this change in their lives of all Black people on a state and a local level. And you have to think about that. Women weren't allowed to do anything. They weren't allowed to vote. So they probably were telling them women that it wasn't even ladylike to sit up there and talk about politics. And if they were to show any type of intellect or understanding or knowledge on politics, it probably put them in grave danger. So for them to change their perspective and to teach themselves and learn and teach other people about politics, quite literally put their bodies, put their livelihoods in danger. They put their bodies on the line, and that again is a part of the struggle, not only for them to have equality and equal rights, but for the people around them. And that is something that Mary Church Terrell reiterates. Mary Church Terrell, she writes, In Louisiana and Tennessee, colored women have several times over petitioned the legislature of their respective states to repeal the obnoxious Jim Crow laws. These women, particularly those who lived in these places, Louisiana and Tennessee, where racism was rampant, considerably heinous, and they made it their sworn duty to make a change. They put themselves in danger. They struggled. You get what I'm saying? They struggled in order to make something happen. And even to this day, the idea of speaking out against an elected official is still not normal. And especially is not normal for black women to do it. That's why people get shell-shocked when they see Candace Owens saying anything, regardless if they agree it or not, because it's not common. Or Joyce Reed, or seeing anyone saying anything about politics, because it's not normal. This is something that's new. So, like I said, these black women during this time period, she's referencing Louisiana, she's representing Tennessee, and you know, Tennessee is the home of the Ku Klux Klan. And Lord knows what Louisiana was up to during this time period. But Mary Church Terrell really does refer the act of these black women asking their representation and representatives of their states for change. She calls it a, quote, waging a ceaseless war, because it was a constant and a continuous act. They didn't just go and trouble them folks one time and go home. They was constantly on their necks. They was constantly seeing them. They was constantly hearing them, because they were struggling for the rights of their community.
If you want to know what a motherfucking boss looks like, bitch, you looking at one. A bitch that handles big business.
She goes on to really discuss the innumerable amount of innocent men and women who are forced into jail cells for the rest of their lives, something that is very true right now. Free Jeffrey, free Palestine. And she writes, colored women who are working for the emancipation and the elevation of their work, of their race, know where their duty lies. And that's something that is so true even to this fucking day. Black women to this day are the reason that so many things have not went awry, not even just in the city, not just in the state of Mississippi, but throughout America. They know where their lies and their affiliations and where their duties lie, and they stand on it. They stand on business.
I'm standing on business. He's standing on business.
Standing on business just to make sure that not only themselves, and I'm keep driving this home because I don't think people understand it. They're not just doing it for themselves. They were not just doing it for their immediate families. They were doing it for their communities and for the people that came after them. They struggled so that they would have a better life. Because black women have always understood that it was their role within the community to speak for those whose voices had been taken from them. Now, if you are looking for a book to read as a black woman or a black person who is interested to understanding intersectionality and what it's like to be a black woman, I would recommend this next book for you. Now, we are now pushing and moving along to the 1970s, and we are going to be focusing on Frances Bell and her book in Black Women's Manifesto, Double Jeopardy, to be Black and Female. And I truly love this book just because it really does focus on, in so many ways, the psychological and socio-political struggle of black women, especially for the purposes of this podcast episode. So for those who have never heard of Frances M. Bell, she is one of the first to theorize about the intersection and the effects that oppression holds on class, on gender, and on race. In fact, Frances Bell wrote about the intersectional feminism before the term was coined.
Intersectionality is one of my favorite terms in the history of philosophy, and it was popularized by Kimberly Crenshaw in her 1989 essay titled Demarginalizing the Intersection of Race and Sex. Now, this is a term so many people understand really well, so I'm going to explain it just briefly, but there's something I really want to emphasize about this term that I think flies under many people's radars. In this text, Crenshaw looks at various court cases in which black women brought forward complaints that their organization or the company that they worked for were discriminating against them on the basis of their being black women. Now, these court cases demonstrated for Crenshaw that the courts, the judicial system, was wholly unequipped to understand intersectionality. That is, they were unequipped to understand how someone could experience discrimination from many different fronts, from both racism and sexism. Instead, Crenshaw identifies that the court system is only equipped to understand these cases through what she calls the single axis framework. They were only equipped to understand racism and sexism on their own. And this was demonstrated in these court cases because the court systems responded to these women by saying, okay, if we want to know if racism is going on, what we need to do is look at racism. So they looked at this organization and they observed that black men were actually doing quite well. So they were like, okay, well, clearly there's no racism going on. They did the same thing then with sexism, and they looked at the organization and identified that white women were doing quite well. So then they're like, okay, well, clearly there's no sexism going on here. So then they would throw out these court cases brought forward by these black women to say that, we've identified there is neither racism nor sexism in these organizations. So what was going on here? Crenshaw suggests that actually what's going on here is that black women, because they experience discrimination from many different fronts as being both black and women, the court system was actually ill-equipped to understand and to even observe and see this discrimination. And so these court cases were being thrown out. They were unequipped to understand the multidimensionality of oppression that these black women experienced. They were unequipped to understand the intersectionality, the intersection of various forms of repression. Now, the mysterious part of this text is one line in which she says that the sum of racism and sexism is greater than either racism and sexism combined. So when someone experiences oppression from many different fronts, their experiences exceed the sum of any of those forms of oppression. And in their being exceeded, they then exceed identification from these court systems that uphold white supremacy.
What I love about good literature, especially good black literature, is the fact that it builds upon one another. If Sojourner Truth hadn't never put out Ain't I a Woman, Frances Beale wouldn't have never been able to write this manifesto. So throughout this work, Frances Beale makes one fact extremely clear, and it is all inequality is not created equally. Some people go through little oppression, and some of us, the big soldiers, we go through big oppression. And we have to stand on big business when we fighting the white man and the white power structure. And that's okay. And I did hear this man, the scientist, a black scientist, he was talking about infinities. And he was like, y'all do realize that some infinities are bigger than other infinities.
I don't know how many people know this, but often it's mind-blowing when you learn that some infinities are bigger than others. Joe Rogan just leaned 2 feet away from the microphone.
How's that?
Yeah, not all infinities are the same size.
But if it's infinity, then it's infinity. It's infinite. What is no?
Okay. Don't you remember when you were a kid? They said, what's the biggest number you know? 1,000,000. Well, there's 1,000,001. Right. Okay, how about a billion? Well, it's 1,000,001. The annoying kid always added one to it. Okay, how about infinity? Well, infinity and one. Right. Okay, well, it turns out infinity and one and infinity are the same number. Okay, so for example, the number of counting numbers, so 1, 2, 3, up to infinity, okay?
Right.
The numbers you would use to count things, that's infinite. The number of irrational numbers, so the numbers that you cannot represent as a fraction, okay? There are more of those than there are counting numbers.
Whoa.
It relates to this as well, because you might be oppressed, but my darling, you're not as oppressed as the darkest blue, black, purple, morbidly obese, diabetic, ADHD, Jewish, dyke, goth out there. You not as oppressed as her. Okay, she fighting and battling demons. So just because the white man wouldn't give you a 50-cent pay raise don't mean that you need to march, because it's some people going over and going through shit that you'll never be able to fathom, okay? Now back to the topic at hand. Now this little piece of literature, it is important because it proficiently describes how it feels to be both black and both female in American society. Now, when you think about this, you can think about W.E.B. Du Bois' concept of double consciousness. That's for, the baby conscious group that's just putting their little toes in the water. You know what I'm saying? W.E.B. Du Bois says that being a black person in America is being dually conscious because you're living a life as an American as well as a black person at the same time. But Frances Beale takes this ideology and she adds on to it, because not only are we American, not only are we female, we are also black, and oftentimes we are put in positions where we have to choose which one is more important at which given time. Should I choose to put blackness over femininity, or should I put my American identity over being a woman? Which one is which? And as black women, oftentimes we put our blackness over our womanhood, and that's something that she really does push throughout this work of literature. And I like it because she is so raw and she is so unfiltered, and a lot of her words are very unsettling to non-people of color or to the naysayers, but they really do embody the essence of black womanhood by showcasing their willingness to struggle as well as their willingness to overcome. So Frances Beale, within her writing of Double Jeopardy, what she does is she tries to give her reading audience an opportunity to truly understand the worth and the value of the black woman. And you have to understand that it is viewed in a hierarchical structure, right? So she notes that the subordinate group, and in this case that would be black women, are often oppressed by black men. And she justifies this observation when she reveals that, quote, she says this: "Let me state here and now that black women in America can justly be described as a slave of a slave," end quote. Although all black people were enslaved, to some men, black women were created to be helpmates. And I feel like that is a problem that we're starting to see resurge again right now, because oftentimes when we see black men in power, especially those who cling so tightly to white patriarchal male structures, what they do, they won't try to break down. They won't struggle for the people. They won't try to tear down that hierarchical structure of power. What they, at the very most, what they'll do is they'll try to take the master's tools to break down the master's house, or they'll end up incorporating themselves within it. So what do I mean by that? When we think of a black woman as a helpmate, that is something that is extremely biblical, and I hate to say it, but that comes from Christianity. And in so many cases, this is a tool of oppression, this ideology, because you're telling me that my worth, it truly is to reproduce, to put other children, other workers, other men on this planet, and my other purpose is to help you. And that's it. I'm just supposed to be satisfied and okay with it. All right. So, to black men, the purpose of the black woman was solely for, like I said, procreation and maintaining the domestic sphere. It's all we good for. Get in that kitchen, make a sandwich, take your shoes off, be barefoot, be pretty. We don't. What I need education for? I can't even spell education. I don't need to read. I just need to read that nigga mind and give him a back massage and pack him lunch for tomorrow. That's the only thing I'm good for. Okay? And that's how they want me to think. Okay? And I'm going to stay in a woman's place. I don't even know what I'm doing here on this microphone. I need to get back to the kitchen. Okay? So, Frances Beale, she describes it as, quote, she must lead her entire life as a satellite to her man. And I felt like this metaphor is so powerful because she's saying the purpose of the black woman's life is much like the purpose of a satellite. It is to orbit around a mass and monitor everything that it does. That's what satellites in space do. They orbit Earth, they orbit shit, and they absorb and they send information back to the motherboard. That's what they do right there. And I think that's a great way of explaining how your uncle them, your grandpappy, and your grandpappy's grandpappy treated women. That's all we knew how to do. And a lot of women took that upon themselves as a means of survival. And that's why I hate it when people be like, I'll never be like my grandma. Da, 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 da. She had to keep her mouth closed, baby, so she could survive. She struggled and she went through that silently so that our ungrateful asses could be here today and can see the errors of her ways and do something differently about it. But I digress. So by reducing the black man in America to such abject oppression, the black woman truly was left with no protector and she was used. And it's here when Frances Beale states that we all learn that black women were left to defend for themselves and their own livelihoods. And it's crazy because she completely, what's the word that I'm looking for? She foreshadowed that. She wrote this in the 1970s. She had no clue about the drug epidemic that would happen in the 80s and the 90s. In the 1970s, Frances Beale was able to completely understand that because the black man was reduced in America, because he was so oppressed that the black woman was alone, that she had no protection and that she was used. And she wrote this 10 years before the cocaine epidemic that left many black men in jail, black men dead in the hands of violence, and it left black women alone, unprotected, and used to raise the next generation of children who would have father issues, who would have resentment issues against their mothers who were doing the best that they could because they were struggling. You see what I'm saying? There was no one left to uplift, to defend, or to protect the black woman, because their partners were stripped away from their identity so harshly that they could not defend for themselves. Black men no longer had the strength to uplift and to give the gift of protection to the black woman and to carry. He could only carry his own burdens. And that's why I always say that it is like in the year of our Lord 2023, moving on to 2024, it is completely ignorant for a black woman to assume that a black man is going to come to her aid, because he simply cannot. It is the responsibility of the black women and the black women around her to uplift and pull themselves up, because they've been burdened for so long, and that's just the God honest truth. And it is without the gift of protection that the black woman was alone. And it was in her solitude that the black woman was taken advantage by the world. And this is the experience of the black woman within the domestic sphere. She is oppressed by everyone, including the black male. And as a unit, the black woman is seen first to none and is favorably valued by no one.
So today I learned about Frances Beale, and we're going to talk more about her later, but I'm going to give you the highlights, okay? She is a feminist and a peace and justice political activist. She primarily focuses on women's rights, racial justice, anti-war and peace work. She was a founding member of SNCC, which stands for Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, as well as the founding member of the Black Women's Liberation Committee. Okay. Now, she is best known for writing the Black Women's Manifesto, Double Jeopardy, to be Black and Female. She wrote this in 1969. And I wanted to share just a snippet with you, okay? Just a few things that, stood out to me. Unfortunately, there seems to be some confusion in the movement today as to who has been oppressing whom. Since the advent of Black power, the Black male has exerted a more prominent leadership role in our struggle for justice in this country. He sees the system for what it really is, for the most part. But where he rejects its values and mores on many issues, when it comes to women, he seems to take his guidelines from the pages of the Ladies' Home Journal. Certain Black men are maintaining that they have been castrated by society, but that Black women somehow escaped this persecution and even contributed to this emasculation. Let me state here and now that the Black woman in America can justly be described as a slave of a slave. By reducing the Black man in America to such abject oppression, the Black woman had no protector and was used, and is still being used in some cases, as the scapegoat for the evils that this horrendous system has perpetrated on Black men. Her physical image has been maliciously maligned. She has been sexually molested and abused by the white colonizer. She has suffered the worst kind of economic exploitation, having been forced to serve as the white woman's maid and wet nurse for white offspring, while her own children were more often than not starving and neglected. It is the depth of degradation to be socially manipulated, physically raped, used to undermine your own household, and to be powerless to reverse this syndrome. It is true that our husbands, fathers, brothers, and sons have been emasculated, lynched, and brutalized. They have suffered from the cruelest assault on mankind that the world has ever known. However, it is a gross distortion of fact to state that Black women have oppressed Black men. The capitalist system found it expedient to enslave and oppress them, and proceeded to do so without signing any agreements with Black women. Those who are exerting their manhood by telling Black women to step back into a domestic submissive role are assuming a counter-revolutionary position. Black women likewise have been abused by the system, and we must begin talking about the elimination of all kinds of oppression.
Now, at the beginning of this episode, we were discussing Sojourner Truth and where was she? She was at a women's right rally. I believe she was at Seneca Falls. Now, like I said, without Sojourner Truth, Frances Beale would not have been able to build upon her ideology. So in this book, what she does is she writes about her perspective of the women's right movement and how it is commonly shared with other minority women throughout history in the past and the present, but it was not a safe place for women of color at all. And what she does is she talks about white womanhood more directly and more head on. So we're going to go ahead and divulge into that. So her perspective of the women's rights movement is commonly shared, like I said, and when we are speaking on this topic, it is revealed that this movement in particular was not safe for women of color, and those who held the power within these movements did not have the best interests or wants or needs of minority people within their hearts. It was not within their scope. And, you know, that's something that a lot of people often think about. And it goes back to the idea that not all inequality is equal. Like, white women have their own set of oppression. You know, they're boss babes. They bad bitches. They only have to worry about sexism. We don't. We have to worry about misogyny. That is the hate of black women. We have to focus on sexism, which is just the hate of women altogether. We have to focus on racism and oppression. So our oppression, our inequality is way bigger than that of a white woman. And that's just us being honest, right? So what Francis Bell says is the white woman's movement is far from being monolithic. And in this context, Bell is stating that the status of the women's rights movement was far away from being individual and uniform. And that was very similar to the suffrage movement of the 1800s. And she goes on to say that any white group that does not have an anti-imperialist and anti-racist ideology has absolutely nothing in common with the black woman's struggle. And it lets her readers know, that lets us know that we must be aware of the harm and the negativity stemming from these imperialist and racist views in the closet. And they're often closeted, that any non-person of color can get to the understanding the struggle of the black woman. You'll never be able to sit with us, baby, because you'll never be able to truly understand the struggle. Even if one is aware, they'll never be able to completely comprehend the black woman's struggle because it is so normalized and it is built into the fabric of their day-to-day lives that they would simply overlook it. Then what Bell does is she questions it. Are white women asking to be equal to white men in their peculiar treatment of third world peoples? What assurance have black women that white women will be any less racist and exploitive if they had the power and were in the position to do so? These questions are just considering the history and the treatment of black women from white women. And who is to say that white women truly do have the best interests of black women at heart? And you know what? Oh, that reminds me of that episode of American Horror Story, because I'm sorry, y'all. Like I said, it was an interracial couple, and it was some paranoid shit outside. Her black husband having sex with a spirit outside. He is possessed. He under a spell. He hitting that thing from the back, and his sister is there in the house. Her daughter been kidnapped. They niece is gone. She kidnapped. Something going on with her husband. She see her husband doing something stupid. She go home and she called the police on her husband's sister. And I'm like, how did you get here? And you know how? It's because that they don't have the best interests of black women in mind at all. They don't care. That's why, you know, like, they don't think when it comes to calling the police. It's so normalized for them that they won't even sit down and think about the horrors and the harm it would do to us. We just live two different lives, and it is their fault because they have not deconstructed it. They have not decentered whiteness and Eurocentric thought. But you cannot expect them to understand it because they're not living through it, if that makes sense. But Frances Bell, she concludes her thoughts by saying there are some serious questions that the white women's liberation movement have failed to address itself to. And basically she was stating that the entirety well, in my opinion, the entirety of this quote is really powerful because it really does reveal that Frances Bell has always talked about women's movement and its lack of supports towards Black women. And Black women are openly struggling. They are reaching out, they're doing the work, they're networking, they're reaching out to these white women because they're wanting power and they're wanting equality, they're wanting what's right. These Black women want it too, but they don't care about it. And what she does is what's the most powerful. She instructs white women on how to execute feminism in a way that is effective for all. And if you're a white woman and you up under my voice right now, you want to learn how to execute feminism for all, you should go read that book. You know what I'm saying? Because it's not my job to educate you on how you got to go about doing your business. Your business is your business, but that's a great way to start doing it because that's what she do. I'm here just to let you know that you need to do better, you know. And the first step is admitting that there's a problem, you know, and that's good for your spirit. The Bible say the truth shall set you free. So as soon as you admit that first step and you tell the truth, it's gonna set you free. And finally, the groups of people should be more transparent and intentional in their advocacy in order to accept people within those spaces of African American people. And this quote, all of this, the work of Frances Bell still rings true to this day. It's been 50 years since she published that book, roughly. She wrote it in the 1970s, 30 years to 2020, and then another. Yeah, that's 50 years, babe. And it still rings true. So, you know, people be saying, oh, we're so far away from racism. Ain't no more racism. Racism died during integration. No, it didn't. All this shit still apply to this day. And that's why you niggas need to start picking up books and reading them. All the answers are in the books. They done already did all this stuff. You just have to read it, reimagine it, modernize it, and make it yours. That's all you got to do. What I want to talk about next, again, we're still in the 1970s. We're still within this Black Power movement, and we're watching these women struggle for the rights of everyone around them. And I really wanted to discuss this specific case that I know a few of you have not, a lot of you haven't heard of, and I think it's so powerful. It's one of my favorite cases that I've come over since I started doing research and working on understanding Black female like revolution. Okay, so what I want to focus on is that through the arrest, the trial, and the acquittal of Joanne Little, that Angela Davis was able to help the Black community really alter its views on equality and human rights as a whole. So let me set the stage for you. Picture it, Sicily, 1974. We is in Beaufort County, North Carolina. Now, the body of Clarence Alligood, who was the Beaufort County, North Carolina lone jailer, was found within a jail cell. He was found dead on August 27, 1974. Now, Clarence Alligood was a hefty 62-year-old white man, and he was stabbed 11 times with an ice pick that he kept within his desk drawer within the jail. Now, what I'm gonna say is the jail was really, really small. Y'all got a picture. It wasn't prison. It was jail. You gotta knock it off. Prison and jail are not the same.
Prison. I've never been to prison. You have 19 felonies, times. No convictions. Yeah, knock it off. Prison and jail aren't the same. No. Okay, no. Calm down. Only one of us has $12 worth of jewelry on. No.
So, at first glance, the incident appeared to be like this simple case of murder and escape by this Black woman whose name was Joanne Little, and she was serving time for shoplifting and breaking and entering. So what happened was Joanne Little, her ass was out here with this little boy. She was about 20 years old, and they got arrested, and she was in jail. So while she was in jail, Clarence Alligood sexually assaulted her. He raped her. And I guess the Joker, after he got his good feel up, he didn't lock the case up good, because what she did was she grabbed an ice pick and she stabbed him 11 times out of self-defense. And then and the bitch got up and she ran away. Yes, she did. And she ran away. She was gone. She was missing for a few days. And what she did, they didn't even find her. She gave herself up, and she claimed that she committed this act on the grounds of self-defense. So I found this story within a book, which is another book that I suggested you guys read. It's called Sisters in the Struggle, African American Women in Civil Rights, Black Power Movement, and it was written by this woman. Her name is Ashley Framer. So within the book, Ashley Framer, she says, while out on bail, she fled, but she was later apprehended and was being held in Beaufort County Jail while she was attacked by her jailer, Clarence Alligood. And Joanne Little was charged with first-degree murder, which at the time carried the possibility of a death penalty.
In the early morning hours of August 27, 1974, the body of Clarence Alligood, Beaufort County, North Carolina's lone night jailer, was found in one of the jail cells. The 62-year-old white man had been stabbed 11 times with an ice pick he kept in a desk drawer. At first, the incident appeared to be a simple case of murder and escape by a black woman prisoner, the lone occupant of the women's section, serving time for breaking and entering. Within days, another surprise. The missing woman, 20-year-old Joanne Little, pleading self-defense, gave herself up to authorities. The case has become a cause among women's and civil rights groups, which are raising allegations about what goes on in small-town jails and what rights women have to defend themselves against sexual attack.
I just didn't know what to do. I was so frightened I didn't know what to do. So I can't even explain how I felt. Because it's even now it's unexplainable. You wouldn't even be able to understand it, until you're in my position.
And the matter of running away from the jail came from what kind of feelings within you?
Knowing that, I just can't explain it. Knowing the people there and how they are, there's no way of telling how they would have reacted. There's no way of telling whether I would have even been able to be sitting here now telling you what happened. There's no way of even telling you whether I would have even been able to get a trial.
It took the jury an hour and 18 minutes to reach the verdict. The jury members had three choices: guilty of second-degree murder, guilty of manslaughter, or not guilty. Jury foreman, 26-year-old Mark Nielsen, a stereo record shop operator, stood at attention to answer the court clerk's question: have you agreed upon your verdict? Nielsen: we find the defendant, Joanne Little, not guilty. Miss Little's head tilted back slightly, her eyes closed, then came the tears and a smile. Her victory was somewhat marred when Judge Hamilton Hobgood, recalling earlier heated courtroom exchanges with Chief Defense Attorney Jerry Paul, sentenced him to 14 days in jail for contempt of court. Chief Prosecutor William Griffin declined to comment on the verdict, but said that the case had to be tried in order to preserve the integrity of the system. The jurors said they did not believe the state had proved its case.
We cleared our minds completely of anything that we felt that could keep us from getting to a unanimous verdict, and on the first vote we all decided.
The state really hadn't shown us enough evidence.
Miss Little, a symbol among women's and civil rights groups, talked about the verdict.
I didn't think that the jury was going to come back as quickly as they did. When they came back, all I could do was, try to black out everything and just sit really stiff. And when he said yes, they had a verdict, and when he said not guilty, I just threw my head back and just, tears just came down because I was so happy that, I would never have to go to bed, thinking, well, I wonder what they're going to do, and with a lot of things hanging over here. And I feel good that I have my freedom.
Ironically enough, during this time period, there were many Black American citizens who were experiencing several other events surrounding the issue of women's rights, the rights of African American women, as well as the rights of people who were in prison. So, in the same time period of the trial as Joanne Little, Americans experienced the Equal Rights Amendment. So, during this time period, the Supreme Court decision of Roe versus Wade, the founding of the National Black Feminist Organization, as well as the arrest, trial, and the acquittal of Angela Davis. So it was a lot of shit going on during this time period. So Angela Davis was amongst the many Black women who were compelled to advocate on an ideological basis for the freedom of Joanne Little, because she could understand. For those who don't know, Angela Davis was also on trial, and she defended her own self, and she got herself off. So during this same period, after she had really advocated and emancipated herself, she was also in the ear of Joanne Little, advocating for her, encouraging her, sending her advice to help her also overcome what she was going through, because Joanne Little was a victim, right? So prior to Joanne Little's case, Angela Davis was actively concerned about sexual assault and the violence and the effect that going to jail had on Black women throughout history. And she says that's one of the reasons why she felt so drawn to help Joanne Little prepare for her trial, and she offered invaluable assistance. And she reiterates this fact, and she states, Angela Davis says, quote, "It was a sister who was obviously in need of assistance, and because of the successful outcome of my case, I did whatever I could do to help organize movements around the case of other individuals." And what's crazy enough, the jury found Joanne Little not guilty because the jurors believed that the state did not prove their case against Joanne Little because of their lack of evidence. And ironically enough, this was the first time a woman was acquitted for murder on the grounds of self-defense against sexual violence. Don't that blow your mind? 1974. 1974 was the first time a Black woman was acquitted of murder on the grounds of self-defense against sexual violence. That's the struggle. The struggle is knowing that during enslavement, Black women and Black men were severely raped, severely sexually assaulted, severely tortured, and some of them had the gall to uprise, to harm their masters, their mistresses, and they were put to death. It wasn't until 1974 that a woman, not just a Black woman, but a woman in general, was acquitted of murder on the grounds of self-defense against sexual violence. That, ladies and gentlemen, that's the struggle. And because of Joanne's Little struggle, she became the symbol and the catalyst for these continuous movements towards African American and the women's rights movement. And it was because of this that she was insistent upon her right to defend herself and to have a voice in discussions about her own life. These movements focus on raising allegations about what goes on in small town jails and the rights that women have to defend themselves against sexual assault. My God, today, to me, that is so powerful. So, at the end of the day, because of Joanne Little's struggle, her case became a national case for prisoner right advocates, feminists, and people who sought to advocate against the death penalty and racial justice. And her struggle and the continued struggle which she went through will continue to help and to influence the way that, I guess, life for women who are victims
When I decided that I was going to devote my life primarily to the struggle for the liberation of black people and to the struggle for socialism, I decided at that point, I suppose, that my life belonged to that struggle.
Now, lastly, you guys, I really wanted to talk about Assata Shakur and her autobiography entitled Assata, an Autobiography, which was written in 1988. Now, Assata is who inspired this episode, Freestyle to She Who Struggles. Ironically enough, her name, Assata, translates into She Who Struggles. And I find it so powerful and so endearing. And for those who don't know, Assata Shakur is probably one of the most famous black female Black Panthers.
And Chesimard, who calls herself Assata Shakur, talking to me in Havana, Cuba, talking of her fears that the New Jersey State Police will somehow find a way to get to her.
You know, these people will stop at nothing.
In 1979, Shakur escaped from a New Jersey prison where she was serving life for the murder of State Trooper Werner Forrester. Police said he was executed with his own gun.
It was such an unfair trial, by an all-white jury.
Joanne Chesimard is the #1 fugitive for the New Jersey State Police.
The head of the state police intently watched a tape of my interview with the convicted cop killer as she claimed state troopers tortured her in the hospital.
You know, they would stick their hands in the wounds. Does it hurt here? Does it hurt here?
It's been almost 25 years, and I'm sure that she's replayed this and turned it around to her benefit many, many times.
Shakur portrayed herself as a fighter for racial justice by what she called armed struggle if necessary.
People have the right to free themselves from oppression by whatever means they deem possible.
She is not a heroine. She's a murderer.
Colonel Williams called Shakur's fears of police assassination ludicrous, but then he gave me this startling comment.
We would do everything we could to get her off the island of Cuba, and if that includes kidnapping, we would do it.
Colonel Williams told me the police determination to recapture Chesimard is fired by the memory of Trooper Forrester on the memorial wall.
She killed my husband.
Rose Forrester, the trooper's widow. Their son was just 3.5 years old when her husband was gunned down.
Say to her that I am totally sorry that her husband was killed. I did not kill him.
She is sorry? I doubt it that she is sorry. No. I think they know that what they were doing that night.
Anyone who suffers a loss is in great pain. And I hope that she understands my pain as well.
She don't know what suffering is.
As for Colonel Williams' statement to me that he was prepared to kidnap Joanne Chesimard from Cuba, later in the interview he said that only lawful actions would be taken, but he didn't elaborate.
She is also known to be either the mother or the godmother of Tupac Shakur. And as we all know, if it wasn't for his untimely death, Tupac Shakur probably would have been one of the greatest revolutionaries for Black people of our time, because he had the money, he had the followers and the influence, and he also had the political backing of the Black Panther Party as well as the Black music industry. But it was from Assata that his knowledge, his influence, that's where it came from. And that's why I find her story to be so powerful.
Tupac was engaging in revolutionary activity. Yes, he still had the gang side, that he was dealing with Death Row, but Tupac had some very clear objectives for the Black community. He loved his people, unlike many of the rappers today. Tupac loved his people, and he was going to use his money and his platform to benefit his community. Do you know the history of the Black Panthers? Do you know the history of the Black Liberation Army? They didn't have Tupac's money or his presence. So the government, I'm quite certain, was paranoid, waiting for Tupac to flip the switch from so-called gangster
to full-time revolutionary. I mean, look at his godparents. Geronimo Pratt, Assata Shakur, Sekou Odinga. I mean, look who he was raised under. These are some of the most iconic revolutionaries in American history. And I have to state it again. The number one rapper, the most famous rapper, is also the leading revolutionary in Black America. Do you know what Tupac could have done had he lived? Tupac would have went down in history, arguably, had he gotten his mind right in time. He could have arguably went down in history as the greatest revolutionary to ever walk American soil. Greater than Malcolm, greater than King, greater than Huey, because he had the money, he had the presence, and he had the followers. The Panthers had the numbers, but they didn't have the money. Black liberation had the soldiers. They didn't have the money or the platform. Tupac had the money, the platform, in the spirit. He had to go.
Behind every powerful man is an even more powerful woman. And I think this is a great case of that. Now, in Assata Shakur's autobiography, what she talks about is the idea of maintaining the struggle. And this idea of maintaining the struggle is this common theme that is used to describe the realistic views of Black women in the concerns of the expectations of obtaining equality and liberation. So, as we all know, from the very start, the beginning of American history, the Black woman was never supposed to succeed. We were always supposed to stay where we were, which is at the bottom. And to an extent, Assata Shakur, she writes about this idea towards the end part of her autobiography. And she states, quote, "A lot of people don't know how many ways racism can manifest itself and how many ways people can fight against it." And I think with technology, we are losing the information and the knowledge of knowing the different ways to be able to fight against racism. I feel like it's been so summarized that people only know to protest. People only know to do sit-ins. But there's so many different ways to fight against oppression. Inherent racism and inequality created this consistent power struggle for people of the African American race, specifically Black women. But this struggle, although it has a negative stigma attached to it, it has been redefined and embraced by Black women, even to the point where Assata literally took the struggle and renamed herself with it. She embraced it. So, although it is the goal for many to overcome the struggle in many ways motivates people to continue to press forward. It is through the struggle that people are not comfortable. And it's within this uncomfortability that it gives people the ability to be able to grow, the ability to be able to become solution solvers, problem solvers, solution bearers, and not the type of people to just notice a problem and complain about it and then move on. That's because the struggle is realistic. And while Black women are waiting to overcome it, Black women are also demanding for those basic human rights. Before I go, I do have to talk about the Combahee River Collective. There's a group of Black women I've referenced several times on this podcast. It is the Combahee River Collective. They are a group of lesbian Black women who live together and wrote beautiful pieces of art that talked about dismantling the patriarchy. And I think it's important to understand that although no one wants to struggle, it seems as if throughout the time, Black women have learned that there is so much beauty in the struggle. So, yeah. The Combahee River Collective speaks about the idea of struggling as one, and they say, we struggle together with men against racism. We, the Black women, we struggle together by ourselves, but in this instance, we will struggle together with Black men against racism. This idea of supporting the struggle is so inspiring because it is a call to action. And when one struggles for an extended period of time, like I said, it motivates them. It inspires them to create a better environment, a better situation, and a solution so that they will not succumb to the inequalities that are faced with a day-to-day basis. So when we're thinking about the struggle, I want you to always understand that we must place an emphasis on the beauty of the struggle. It is our job to redefine the struggle or to make it as our own, because we struggle so that those who come after us no longer have to.
Shout out to the slaves.
Yeah, shout out to the slaves. You feel me? Shout out to Harriet Tubman.
Shout out to the she's a real nigga.
Yeah, shout out to the Mississippi niggas. Yeah, shout out to the Mississippi niggas. Yeah, big penitentiary tractor dragging ass niggas. Yeah. And they don't talk loud. They whisper. Dangerous niggas whisper.
And shout out again to all those people who hate my guts.
Y'all are doing a justice and an effort to the world. Keep breaking these men down one at a time.
Shout out LGBTQ.
You are obsessed and sick.
Yeah, we is back with the big Black shout out, the biggest Blackish shout out in the world. For those who do not know, the big Black shout out is an opportunity to help create and circulate the Black dollar back into our communities and for audience members to explore Black owned hidden gems. I just really wanted to give my cousin Skylar Minor a shout out. My cousin has a clothing brand and it's called No Longer Wicked. You can find her on Instagram, NLW Clothing Co. No Longer Wicked Clothing Co. Essentially, it is a fast fashion brand, and it expresses a lifestyle for those who are not ashamed of the gospel. And I can't hold you. This shit is fine. I'm not just saying it because she my first cousin. The designs are dope. I just got a hoodie from her. And that motherfucker's so hard. Oh, excuse me, Jesus. This brand is to glorify you. Ain't that right? I'm tweaked out. The jacket is fire. I believe it say like walk by faith, no longer wicked on the back. Something godly and inspirational. Jesus on his way back, so sometimes you gotta put a little sign on your back to let him know that you still rocking with him. So if you is no longer wicked and you ain't backsliding no more, if you ain't gay no more, and all you love is women, I feel like you should check out No Longer Wicked Clothing. I think they got something for you. You'll see it on my social media. I just bought me a little jacket. My sister just bought her a set or whatever. And shout out to Sky Mizzle. Shout out to the dog, man. I can't wait to see you again. Now, if you or somebody that you know has a Black-owned business, and y'all struggling, y'all know we is in the second Great Depression, and y'all losing money. I heard the hairstylists, they going back to a 9-to-5 because they struggling. You want some promotion, free promotion. You need to holler at your girl. Yeah, you get at me. I give you a free shout out on my platform because that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to help put you niggas up front for the world to see you for free. So yeah, make sure you're emailing me at afrocentricpodcast@gmail.com. That's afrocentricpodcast@gmail.com.
And God, He's blessing me, honey. God is blessing all the real bitches across the United States of America and Jamaica, Afghanistan.
Did y'all know I like to pray?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. All right, Father God, we just want to give you the thanks And the gratitude again. We love you, and we thank you for blessing us with these opportunities that we have, our careers, our children, our wives, our husbands, our boyfriends, and everything that you blessed us with, Father God. We ask you to continue to bless us.
Be at the mall, church, don't say nothing to me, bitch. I told y'all, bitches, I warned y'all. Stop fucking disrespecting me, bitch.
In Jesus' name, stop her right now. Put her on her back for playing with you, Lord. Take her name out the Lamb's Book of Life. If she playing with you, Lord, in Jesus' name.
We might be sinning, but we can repent tomorrow.
We are also praying for the people of Puerto Rico. We love Puerto Rico.
Oh, Lord, how excellent, how excellent is thy name. Yes, thank you so much for joining praise and worship here at the Sanctimonious Church of God and Fellowship Afrocentric Word of Christ, here located in the great state of Mississippi. For those who are new to the podcast, and for those who don't know, this here is the altar call, and the altar call is the final segment of any podcast episode. And I'm just here to let my people know that I'm here, and I'm yet praying and hoping and fasting, and I'm demanding. I actually offered a sacrifice unto the Lord, and he told me it was a ram in the bush. So, you know, he spared your girl on one. But I just want to let y'all know that I'm yet praying and hoping 40 days, 40 nights out in the wilderness fasting on your behalf. Now, there's a few people that need some prayers. Yes, Lord, I hear you. The first person we is praying for is Randy Jackson. Lord, have mercy, God. Heal him. Heal his body, Jesus. Touch his mind. Touch his glucose, Lord. We don't know. Ever since Randy Jackson got that colostomy bag, and he got the catheter set, and he got a part of his stomach removed, Lord Jesus, Randy Jackson looked like a muppet. He looked like Chadwick Boseman before he passed away. So instead of offering judgment, we is offering prayers. We is lifting Randy Jackson up. It won't be hard. He's only $1.15. We lifting him up in prayers, Lord. Heal his body, Jesus. Yes. Obviously, if you didn't know, we praying for Palestine. And we praying for the Congo. Let my niggas go. You hear me, Pharaoh? Let my people go. Free them. Free Jeffrey. We praying for Jeffrey. Free that man. He was a nice young man. Let him go so he can. Let him go, Jesus, so he can see his children for the holidays. We is praying for all the light-skinned niggas, especially since y'all Lord and Savior, King Harris, is making y'all look bad in the media. We is praying for all the light-skinned, yellow, big teeth, goofy young children. We praying for their mind, Lord. It's getting cold outside, Jesus. You help them and you guide them and you keep them close, because all they want is a closer walk with you, Jesus. That's why they acting out like that. You know, they don't have that much melanin, God, and it's okay, because, you know, all the people is little precious gifts under your blood, Jesus. And sometimes when you wrapping the package, God, sometimes you be wrapping it too fast, but you know, you God, and you know, Jesus, you don't make no mistakes. You just got to slow down sometime, but you know, we just on your time, and Father God, so just we asking for prayers for the light-skinned men. We praying for their egos, Lord. Please heal the broken homes, Father. Heal all the broken families. We praying for Atlanta after Keith Lee left Atlanta. It has been a rift. It has been a true display of Sodom and Gomorrah, God. Heal Atlanta from the crowns of their head to the soles of their feet, God. Just send your spirit, God. Help them, God. Help them. That's all I got. This is your humble servant, God. All right. I'll talk to you later, Jesus. I'll be with you as we never depart ways, Father God. In Jesus' name, I pray in your mighty and matchless name. Amen.
God damn it, I told T.I. he should have kicked that boy ass when last year. If T.I. would have kicked that boy ass last year, that boy wouldn't have had to jack him up today. Yeah, that boy showing out at the Falcon game, embarrassing the family. This is the man, yeah, that King little ugly ass. Oh, that boy got a big mouth on him. And he talk loud with them yellow, big old red, yellow lips. Oh, yeah, that boy loud in the motherfucker. Oh, yeah, he fucking with the Atlanta Falcons up there disrespecting them people, hollering about he standing on business. Boy, if you don't sit your look, you bruise too easy to stand on business. Yeah, that little yellow motherfucker bruise too easy to stand on. Man, nigga, boy, everywhere he get touched, it turn red, purple, and blue. Man, please, that nigga, he can't stand on business that yellow. Hell no. Nigga, please. Boy, nigga be walking around looking like Edward Scissorhands in skin complexion if that boy try to stand on business. See, that's what happened when you don't let them yellow kids play with them black nigga cousins. Boy, you go stand on business with your cousin. Don't give a damn about you. Jealous because your daddy got the Picasso in the house. That's how go fight your cousin, nigga. That's how you know you standing on business. Nigga done fought them cousins. You ain't grew up fighting cousins. Nigga, you been a Picasso living motherfucker. Now y'all all of a sudden, boy, you disrespecting Tippy. Nigga, you done got so, well, you disrespecting Tiny and Tippy. Shit, nigga, please. I'll cut your ass out the wheel. No, I wouldn't. I'll leave your ass in the wheel. And boy, I skin your ass up, having you smelling like burnt rubber. Yeah, I skin your motherfucking ass up, having you smelling like burnt rubber. Nigga, fuck is you talking about? You want to dethrone the king? Is that what you want to do, boy? You want to dethrone the king? Yeah, boy, keep on saying, I'm talking about put you in all kind of finger, forehead lock. And yeah, make you say, Daddy, I quit, Daddy. Say it louder, nigga, in front of walking back out to the field. And Daddy, I quit, Daddy. Yeah, he gonna kick you in your motherfucking ass. But had he done it last year, when I made a request, Tip, get you whooped the boy. Did nobody want you? That wasn't that. You been over there with your white grandmama. Yeah, that wouldn't happen. You the kid been over there with the white grandmama, Tiny's mama. So you a little unruly, little mulatto baby. Yeah, you unruly than a motherfucker, boy. And you can't have no good luck, no blessings. Nothing's gonna come good to a yellow unruly nigga. Y'all have it hard. You better not go to jail. Boy, your daddy, T.I. can't let you go to jail. Cause they go fuck the dog shit out of you in jail. Yeah, boy, you go walk through there. And them niggas go see them lips on that yellow skin. So nigga, please, you better settle down, boy. You don't know what's in store if you keep acting how you acting. That boy don't know what's in store. He don't know it's a nigga down there go crazy over that bushy hair. That grow on his head with them pink lips on that motherfucking palish yellow skin. I'm telling you, nigga, you better settle down and listen to your daddy. When your mama got to you, you should be saying, yes, man. Okay, mama, you right. You right, mom. Nigga, Tip wasn't supposed to come out the back hollering about, nigga, my history ain't no mystery. You done made your daddy pull his gangster card out way from the back. It sounded like your daddy was way back there when he had to come way up here to confront you. Nigga, my history ain't no mystery. I stand on business. You ain't hit nobody. You ain't toe up nothing or nothing. You don't stand on no one. Nigga just stand on business and tear up shit. Shit get knocked over. Yeah, you didn't do none of that, King. Kang. You didn't do none of that. Somebody tell Kang, when niggas stand on business, people get hurt. Didn't nobody get hurt but you when your daddy hurt your feelings and put you in that restraint mood that they used to put us in the boys' home because they couldn't slam us on our head. Let me go. You wasn't stronger than your daddy. You couldn't get out that mood. Nigga, your daddy you couldn't get out of there. So just settle down, son. There's better ways that you can go about expressing your childhood trauma. Now you done run to the internet saying, If y'all seven with the po me shit. It's always the rich kids with that po me shit.
Oh man, it has been a time. It's been a time I've been sitting in this studio, sitting in jail, almost right there, sitting in that jail. It has been a pleasure narrating these thoughts. Thank you so much for sticking around and listening to me talk about this episode, Freestyle 2, She Who Struggles. Hopefully your thought on struggling, your thoughts on black women and black womanhood has changed. If it has not, baby, maybe you lost in the sauce. Maybe this is not the podcast for you. Y'all know I love black women. I have an affinity for black women. I am a black woman, and I too am struggling, going through the ringer, just trying to exist in this motherfucker. This is essentially an audio hug for black women. I love you guys so much. Keep your heads up. Remember that you are struggling. You are not struggling for no reason. You are struggling to help lift as you climb, to help put those who come after you into a greater position. Now, with that being said, I want to thank you all so much for choosing to be Afrocentric today. Please remember that Black Lives Matter. Please listen and protect black women and children. And the only thing that you must do in this lifetime is be black and die. And remember, here at the Afrocentric podcast, we are just civilized people having civilized conversations. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.
One thing that I became aware of in my traveling recently through Africa and the Middle East, in every country that you go to, usually the degree of progress can never be separated from the woman. If you're in a country that's progressive, the woman is progressive. If you're in a country that reflects a consciousness toward the importance of education, it's because the woman is aware of the importance of education. But in every backward country, you'll find the women are backward. And in every country where education is not stressed, it's because the women don't have education. So one of the things I became thoroughly convinced of in my recent travels is the importance of giving freedom to the woman, giving her education, and giving her the incentive to get out there and put that same spirit and understanding in the children. And I frankly am proud of the contribution that our women have made in the struggle for freedom. And I'm one person who's for giving them all of the leeway possible